Section 5.1 is on inequalities. So if we wanted to just graph the equations in example A, we would solve as if it was an equal sign. So I would start by subtracting 40. So I would have 5x is less than or equal to 20, and then I would divide each side by 5. So I'd have x is less than or equal to 4. So if you remember, we're going to put 4 in the middle. You're going to put a number on the right and on the left that are equal distance from the number you are graphing. Because my equation is less than or equal to, that means I'm going to have a closed dot at 4. Okay, so less than or equal to is a closed dot. And less than 4 is pointed to the left. So there is my graph. The second one there, I would solve similarly. I would start by subtracting 75. So I'd have negative 5x is less than 25. And I would divide by negative 5. And here's what's tricky about this one is I am dividing by a negative, which means I need to flip this sign. So that is now going to become a greater than sign and then greater than negative 5. So again, I'm going to put negative 5 in the middle. I'll put a number smaller on the left, number bigger on the right. Okay, just be careful with your negatives. That means 0 is on the right side here. Greater than, okay, is an open dot. Okay, and it's pointed to the right. So I'm graphing to the right. All right, so our note here is when multiplying or dividing by a negative. So when multiplying or dividing by a negative, you must flip the sign. Okay, so don't forget that. That's an important note and it'll be a common mistake. So when multiplying or dividing by a negative, flip the sign. We also are going to look at intersections. Okay, intersection is going to be the overlap between two separate inequalities, and it's kind of considered the and the symbol is the upside down U or the N looking symbol. Or it can be written like this one is, where it just says x is between 4 and 8. Okay, so I'm going to put 4, I'm going to put 8. Okay, the overlap, or the sometimes also thought of as between, since our variable here is between. I'm going to put an open dot at 4 and an open dot at 8 because they are just less than signs. There's no equal to. And then between them would be numbers like 5, 6, 7, everything in between. The union, okay, is everything. Okay, it is not going to be where numbers overlap. It's going to be fully inclusive and everything possible. Sometimes we consider this an or we use the U symbol. So in example B, we've got here A is less than 12 or A is bigger than 20. So we're going to graph this separately. The first part here is going to be the A is less than 12. Okay, that's an open dot at 12 because it's just the less than sign, and then less than is to the left. Or means I need to do this second part separately. So then I'm going to have 20. It is just a greater than, so I'm just going to have an open dot and then shaded to the right. Okay, so intersections are the overlaps are graphed between, and then the unions, which are everything, include usually your graphs going out to the side. Example D says T is between negative 8 and 12, so sometimes they just use the words and not the math symbols. So again, I would have negative 8 and 12. Between is the only kind of tricky part. I think you understand that it's going to be between negative 8 and 12. The only question is it going to be open or closed dots. Between means not including. Okay, so it does not say from negative 8 to 12. It says between those two numbers, meaning do not include them, so those will be open dots. Okay, and then we'll also practice writing them. So if we look at example E, we've got two separate parts here. So two separate parts means we're going to have two different equations. So that first part in red would be x is less than negative 2, less than because it's an open dot, and then shaded to the left. And then I've got x is greater than or equal to, okay, greater than or equal to because this is a closed dot right here. Because I'm saying the union of those, I'm going to write the word or in between them, or you could use the U symbol as well. Okay. Example F here is going straight between these two numbers. Okay, so I start at negative 10. Oopsies, you can't see that. Negative 10, and then I've got negative 5, and I've got x between them. The dot at negative 10 is closed, so that's going to be a less than or equal to. The dot at -5 is open, so it's just the less than sign. When you are writing the intersection here, this part, these inequalities always point to the left. Okay, it always, always, always points to the left. So you're gonna just wanna remember that, always pointing to the left, and then put the X in between. So let's take a look at some of the story problems. Example G says a ticket agency has 275 tickets to sell for a playoff game. Each caller receives 2 tickets. When there are 50 tickets or less remaining, the agency tries to obtain more. How many callers can be served before more tickets are needed? Well, I know I've got 275 tickets right now, and each caller receives 2. So I'm selling 2, so I'm going down, and I want to be concerned about when there are 50 or less remaining. So the amount I have right now, I want to be bigger than 50. Okay, so 275 minus the 2 for each caller has to be bigger than the 50 I have. So if I'm going to go ahead and solve that, I would subtract 275 from each side. So I'd have -2x greater than or equal to -225. I'm going to divide by a -2. Careful, I'm dividing by a negative, so I'm going to, you got it, flip the sign, less than or equal to 112.5. So I'm going to put 112.5. Okay, if we're talking about colors, maybe I should just round that to 112 because I said less than or equal to. So a closed dot 112 and shaded to the left. I would not round up to 113 because of my symbol here. Okay, if it had been greater than or equal to, you would have rounded up to 113. And example H says, at a school in Arizona, to cancel school, the temperature has to be lower than 10, oh rough, lower than 10, or greater than 105. So those are my 2 numbers. Write a compound inequality for the temperatures that will cause school to be canceled. So I need to be lower than 10, or, U symbol, greater than 105. Okay, so kind of write it just like you read it. Less than 10 or greater than 105. At 10, I've got an open dot and shaded to the left. Okay, for my first part. My second part over here is going to be an open dot and shaded to the right. Okay, so inequalities, hopefully you remember those, but if you have some confusions, go ahead and write them. Otherwise, write what you have learned, and we'll talk about it tomorrow.